We want your calls on something different here. We want your calls on whether the racism row surrounding the Reform Party will cost them votes. 0207 862 2222 is the number. Do give us a ring and we'll speak to you in a moment. So the party leader, Nigel Farage, has been criticised by both the Tories and Labour for failing to tackle allegations of racism in the party. It's after a party campaigner in Essex was recorded by an undercover journalist from Channel 4 making racist comments about Rishi Sunak. Take a look at this.
The immigration thing, use the word illegal, emphasise illegal, especially if you open the doors a bunch of sick, mate, sick mother. It's a cult. I tell you what, if you don't know about Islam, it's the most disgusting cult out. I've always been a Tory voter. What annoys me is we got in. What's good is he? You get the young recruits there, yeah, with guns on the beach, target practice. Just shoot them. We've got these running our country. You must be joking, mate.
Mr Farage has said that he was dismayed by the comments and claims that the campaigner called Andrew Parker had nothing to do with the party.
I mean, this is the most outrageous smear I've ever seen. This guy is a setup. He was acting from the minute he walked into that office. He came up with a stream of invective not seen since Alf Garnett was on the television in the early 1970s. And some of it was just, I mean, you know, turning mosques into Wetherspoons. It wasn't even serious. It was nonsense. So I really feel that Channel 4 or the production company need to be called before an inquiry. Let's find out the truth about what happened.
Well, Channel 4 News say that they stand by their rigorous journalism and did not pay any Reform canvasser or anyone else in the report. Mr Parker was not known to Channel 4 News and was filmed undercover. And Rishi Sunak has got involved too, saying that the racist comments made him angry.
On a personal level, do you find it quite upsetting that people are talking about you in that way?
Yeah, well, my two daughters have to see and hear Reform people who campaign for Nigel Farage calling me an effing. It hurts and it makes me angry, and I think he has some questions to answer. And I don't repeat those words lightly. You know, I do so deliberately because this is too important not to call out clearly for what it is.
And now one of the party's candidates, Liam Booth-Isherwood, has stepped down, blaming what he described as a failure of leadership over the allegations of racism in the party. So we're asking, will this all cost them your vote? And Belinda, I'm going to start with you, former MEP for Reform. Sorry, it was the Brexit Party at that time.
Now Reform UK.
Yes, now Reform UK. What's your view in this whole situation?
So what that volunteer leafleter said was absolutely unacceptable, disgusting and racist. You know, no party vets their volunteers and helpers. Reform UK is a very, very new party. We don't have the decades of ground force and groundwork where you get to know and vet your volunteer group. You know, we are a very new party. Every party faces extreme fringe elements trying to get in. But as I said, this was a volunteer leafleter. What he said was disgusting. Reform UK acted swiftly, publicly, made sure that everyone knew that people like him were not welcome in our party. You know, the Brexit Party was the most diverse party in the EU Parliament, black, brown, all sexual orientations and religions. You know, we really diversified the Parliament. And I've known many, many second, third, fourth generation immigrants that have more patriotism in their little finger than the whole of Westminster put together. This has nothing to do with colour. Our Reform rally yesterday, extraordinary, the largest political rally in this election so far, 5,000 people. The star speaker, Zia Youssef, this incredible entrepreneur, Pakistani heritage Muslim gentleman who has now the biggest Reform UK donor, talking about how we must unite on the content of our character and British values, not the colour of our skin. This is a smear campaign. No other party gets treated like this. The Green Party has 21 candidates at the moment. They're under scrutiny for anti-Semitic social media posts. Do you see that getting the same?
Smear campaign?
Yeah.
Who's smearing it?
So I would say it's all being put at Nigel Farage's feet, as if somehow this volunteer that caught saying this disgusting stuff is representative of our party. You know, would you hold Caroline Lucas completely responsible for the anti-Semitism allegations in the Green Party at the moment? No, it's only because we dare to say we want to reduce immigration, which we have been labelled far right. I've been been called far-right, bigot, awful things since the Brexit vote. They've gutted the terms.
Well, just to
they
be
attack
clear
us
with
on
the
that,
Green
yes.
Party, the Green Party have let, I think, 3 candidates go because of these allegations. Henry, what's your view on all of this?
I don't think there's any evidence for a smear campaign. All that's happened is that Reform is being taken more seriously. It's a big political force. It's a new party, but maybe 5 million or more people will vote for Reform this Thursday. And as such, it needs to be scrutinised. It wants to play a major role in the governance of our country. The Conservatives have had problems with Islamophobia and racism. They took money from a guy who said he wanted Diane Abbott shot, Frank Hester. You know, they haven't given that money back, so they're being hammered for it. Labour have done some terrible things, including to Diane Abbott, and there's been racism and anti-Semitism there. They've been scrutinised for it. So why wouldn't Reform UK be scrutinised? And there's a reason why people, as Trevor Phillips said, what is it about Reform UK, or you, Nigel Farage, that persuades the racists, the homophobes, the anti-Semites to join your banner? I'm paraphrasing him. And it's because they think that this is our home. The BNP isn't there, the NF isn't there. Now, it may be a much more diverse group of people who are thinking about Britain, symbolism, Islam, whatever, but they think this is our natural home.
So
What
in
do
the
you
same
say
way,
to that,
racists,
Christopher?
because remember, identity politics, where you judge people on the colour of their skin rather than the content
Not necessarily.
of it, is rife in the Labour Party. Radical Islamists, anti-Semites.
But
Why do they feel at home in the Labour Party?
Identity politics is rife, of course, in Reform UK, in Brexit Party, in UKIP, because it was about we're England, we're Britain, this is our
That's
history
not
and our
about
culture.
colour, that's
No,
not Henry.
but that's an identity as well. It's an identity.
But that's about values and what unites us, not what divides
One
us.
man's meat or one woman's meat is another man's poison. It is true. But the thing is, it is also about identity. It's about our identity being under threat. We're being replaced. All of that, those tropes are also present in some of what Nigel Farage and others have said. It's couched very much more sensitively than the likes of Andrew
I've
Parker.
never seen it or heard. I've known Nigel Farage since I was 19.
Have you read Michael Crick's biography of Nigel Farage?
No, I haven't, but I will
Right,
take my
okay.
experience of the man. I would never
Okay.
be seen dead within a mile of a party that has ever had, racism in the lead. I would never follow Nigel.
You've had to expel 3 candidates: Edward Oakenfold, Robert
So we did the
Lomas,
right thing,
and Leslie
great.
Lilly. But these
so
are people
this is
again.
what the Green Party did. It's what Labour
Yeah.
did when they found anti-Semites in the party.
But
That's
there's
what
a
you do.
reason. I remember back in 1978, Margaret Thatcher made a speech about people in Britain feeling threatened. They were going to be swamped by people of an alien culture. That was a very, right. That's what she said back in 1978. And with that single speech, she wiped 100,000 votes from the National Front. And Nigel Farage has cleverly done exactly the same thing, and he's helped to destroy, yes, the BNP. and the
Culture's
fringe
very
right.
different.
Yeah.
We have a right to be suspicious of some cultures. I'm sorry, but some cultures
okay.
are horrific to women, and I will never, ever say all cultures are the same. Some, including our own, we have flaws in our own, have very worrying behaviours towards women, and I'll never stop speaking about that.
Okay, if we just look at the manifestos, though, when we look at policies on immigration, Reform has some of the tightest policies on immigration, and therefore would probably feel better to somebody who had racist tendencies. So it was a natural home for somebody with those sorts of beliefs.
So why then, Storm, was it reported in the latest poll yesterday that more ethnic minorities are voting for Reform UK than the Liberal Democrats? Because they are not buying the smears. Ever since mass immigration became a problem, anyone who speaks out about it gets called racist, bigot, Nazi. It's got to stop. We've had enough of this smearing. These are sensible, reasonable concerns people have about how many people are coming into the country when we don't have the infrastructure for it. It's not about race.
Let's go to the calls. Christopher from Kent. Will Reform gain or lose your vote?
Well, I mean, I haven't actually decided on my vote anyway at the moment. But what I would say is that I think there is definitely a smear campaign against Nigel Farage, and I do believe this is probably a bit of a setup, because the left-wing media, which includes the BBC and Channel 4, are desperate to keep him out of Parliament because they know that he's going to be the most effective opposition to Keir Starmer and will hold his feet to the fire. So they're trying to smear him with everything they possibly can.
So a smear campaign against Nigel Farage rather than actually the Reform Party.
Well,
when you say a setup, I just have to reiterate, Channel 4 completely deny that, disagree with that. They did not pay anyone. They did not know Andrew Parker before recording this. So do you think Andrew Parker perhaps took it upon himself to do this?
Well, I just find it a very unusual situation. He may well have done, and whatever he did, obviously he should be condemned for it, because what he said was absolutely outrageous, terrible, and racist, and there's no place for that. But I can't help feeling that there's something deeper, that goes deeper than just one individual there. And I think also, I mean, looking back at some of the things that have happened, say on Question Time, for example, there's quite obviously some people that have been planted in the audience.
Well, hang on, Christopher, when it comes to the makeup of an audience, a studio audience, of course, everybody is asked questions before they're selected to try and get a representative selection of the British public. When it comes to Question Time, I mean, no BBC programme is more responsible for the rise of Nigel Farage since 2010 than Question Time. He appeared 40 times more than anybody from any other party. So it's ironic that he's turning around and throwing his toys out of the pram about it now.
Well, no, I mean, I just think that they're just trying to constantly throw this, sort of racism issue at him in order just to try and close him down, just to shut it, to remove him from having a voice.
Christopher, there was
I think
also...
the left tend to do that quite a lot, actually.
There was also
they
some...
weaponise it.
There was also some undercover footage of other canvassers talking about a pride flag in a rather derogatory term. Were they plants too?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they were obviously out of order as well. I mean, that's not acceptable either. The language that they used, but I do have suspicions, I'm afraid, of, because the media in this country, the BBC, Channel 4, Sky, are so sort of left wing.
Christopher, look, would you describe the Daily Telegraph or the Times, or the Daily Mail as left wing? They've reported all of this stuff as well. It is news. It is of interest. Nigel Farage is a consequential figure, therefore he has to be scrutinised. That's all it is.
Yes, no, I agree. They should all be scrutinised, for sure. I have nothing against that, and I think all these political figures should be scrutinised. But I just get the sense that there's an active agenda to prevent Nigel Farage from entering Parliament, because they are scared that he is going to be the person that will hold Keir's feet to the fire better than any other opposition.
But they're terrified, Christopher. They're terrified. It's because we're getting more flack because we are over the target, and the establishment wants the status quo. They want to keep control and power. They don't like us plebs voting and changing, Parliament. They don't like change, and they don't want us to rise in the polls, and this is why we're getting the smear and hit jobs that we've had.
Christopher, thank you very much for your call. Dermot from Walton-on-Thames, what's your thoughts when it comes to this racism row surrounding reform? Is it going to stop you voting for reform?
Well, do you know what? I have been so interested in this whole time of life that we're in. I've worked as a pilot around the world, and I've seen all kinds of regimes around the world. And I've been talking to loads of young people, and I've been swinging between Reform and the Liberal Democrats. And I think the most important thing in this country that we can do is to fix our health service. That is the most important thing we all rely on.
Right. It's an interesting combination to swing between Liberal Democrats and Reform, because they have quite different policies, particularly on immigration, which is one of the key points for Reform. So having heard this racism row sort of unfold over the weekend, where are you swinging more to Liberal Democrats, or do you think this is a bit of a smear campaign?
I know I'm swinging towards the Lib Dems. Yeah, I think they are probably the way forward.
Sorry, what was that, Dermot? They're what?
Sorry, the line's probably not very good. I'm still undecided. The Reform would be a massive revolution, I suppose, and God knows what would happen. But yes, Liberal Democrats, I think, are probably the people to vote for. Okay, that's in my heart.
So they've potentially lost your vote. Dermot, thank you very much for your call. Paul from Greater Manchester, have they lost your vote?
They never had it in the first place. I can't stand Reform. I mean, to be honest, I don't think this will affect many Reform voters, though, because a lot of them, in my opinion, are racist, are LGBT phobic.
Let him land. Let him land. Go on, Paul, please. He's a Manchester guy. Let him talk.
They've no respect for women. And can I ask Belinda as well? you're saying you're all tolerant in this circle. Well, if you'd been an MP when gay marriage was, you were able to vote for gay marriage, would you have voted for it? Do you respect men and women being born in the wrong bodies and needing to change?
Okay,
would you wear a red ribbon on World AIDS Day? I mean, this is social conservatism. And Belinda's saying that Nigel Farage is anti-establishment. He's part of the elite. He goes over hanging out with Donald Trump.
That is a criticism that's been made before. You covered quite a lot of ground there, Paul. Give Belinda a bit of time to come back.
Yeah, I think unfortunately you've fallen for all the sort of mass hysteria and indoctrination about what Reform UK is, and suggesting that, you know, many reformers are racist. I think that's a terrible thing to say based on absolutely nothing. This is an election. There are unvetted volunteers. No party vets volunteers, and all the parties suffer from fringe extremists getting in. And in fact, Reform UK, our policies are pretty much what the centrist policies were 20 years ago. But we get called far right and we get called all these horrific names under the sun because we dare to challenge the establishment. And by the way, I don't have to follow your ideology or your beliefs or your religion to be a nice person. We have freedom of expression here, so I can choose to believe in gender ideology or not. It's one of the great things about this country. It doesn't make someone evil because we don't believe in your religious beliefs.
Paul?
Well, to be honest, I asked Belinda if she'd have voted for gay marriage, and
yes,
it'd be interesting
I would
to know.
have voted for gay marriage. I have a family full of very happy gay relationships.
That's fair enough, but to be honest, it doesn't worry me all this, because if you look at France at the minute, we're constantly hearing that Marine Le Pen's party have done so well, but when you look, the hard left are only a few percentage points behind, and the centre have got 20-odd%. So even in this country and in France, the centre to left vote is always higher. It's just that a lot of noise is made about the hard right all the time, but they'll never win because most people
Paul,
are not hard right.
It's an interesting similarity you're bringing up there, but I don't know if Reform would consider themselves hard right.
Not at all. As I said, we're pretty much centrist policies were 20, 30 years ago.
You're reaching there, Belinda. You can't be described as centrist,
please. Yes, protecting borders, men are men, women are women, all
one in, one out.
All I'm saying is liberalism has completely failed across Europe. It was once a noble cause, and its custodians have not had the backbone to protect it from the crazy extremists that have hijacked it into a sort of open borders, mismanaged, against truth.
But hang on, you're calling it open borders. Have you seen what people are drowning to try and get into either this country or southern Europe because the borders are closed? They're not open at all.
No,
that's why they're going in.
We can talk about this forever, but the people of Europe are not some racist far-righters. They're people responding to the failure of liberalism to control their own nation-state's borders.
Paul, thank you very much for your call. Elaine from West Lothian, what's your view when it comes to Reform now? Has the recent race row changed your view?
No, well, I've already voted for Reform through post, so it wouldn't matter anyway. But
have you been disappointed by what's happened, or do you think this is happening in other parties too?
No, I think Nigel Farage dealt with it quicker than most of the other parties would have dealt with it.
And I mean, by accusing somebody of being an actor in this and for it to be a set-up, that's how he's dealt with it, Elaine. Do you think that that's fair?
No, what happens is racists are attaching themselves to Reform UK because there's no other party talking about immigration, what they're going to do to reduce the mass immigration. So they people have got nobody
Elaine, that's
to
not
vote
true.
for.
I mean, the Prime Minister has talked about Rwanda and getting people out and returns agreements with various countries.
But he's called the election and there's not a flight took off because he knows there's no flights taking off.
But what do you say to that, Belinda, that racists are attaching themselves to Reform? Do you think that that's a fair statement to make?
So I would say there are racists in our country, and I'm really happy when they get called out. The more that get called out and publicly shamed, the better, because they have no place in political discourse. If they feel like Reform is a home for them, then they're wrong. But I think that their racists take all shape and form and are attached to every party when they don't have an extreme.
And also, just finally, I want to pick up on Farage's comment that this was a plant, a stooge. Or do you follow that line, or do you think that might be a little...
I think Nigel has every right to be very suspicious over all the circumstantial evidence because look, shenanigans go on with politics, okay? And Channel 4 doesn't have the best reputation, and I just feel
Really?
I just feel like, well, yes,
Channel 4 News is an amazing programme. programme.
We had to deal with them
Phenomenal.
over the Brexit Party, and not many of us wanted to even really appear because we felt like
because they would challenge you robustly.
Not at all. I was happy to go on the BBC and get completely roasted, and I roasted right back. But I think there are circumstances where you have to have an investigation. If someone has an acting page saying they do undercover work, put on rough accents, and then they have that. I mean, his language I have never heard before in company. I would say what's great is the progress has been made in our country. The response to Andrew saying such horrific things was such outrage. That was a really good sign that we're so upset when that language is used as a country.
All right. Elaine, thank you very much for your call. Thanks for all your calls on that.